Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Everything in Racing. We've taken a little bit of a break here for a little bit. I was on vacation. Ernie has had issues just being Ernie. And, but here we are, and I'm looking forward to it. And we have a brand new guest on, Jason from Wicked Performance. How you doing, brother?
All right. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty well. Can't complain too loudly.
Nobody listening anyway, would it?
No. So, first question we ask everybody when they come on the podcast is, what got you in this world of horrible financial decisions?
I guess you say I was born into it. My dad always been into racing, so that's I guess I just was destined to fall into it myself. He's a mechanic, builds transmissions and stuff too. So ever since I was little, we were at a shop with him.
Yep. Yep. So, like, what kind of racing did he do?
He's always been into bracket racing.
Bracket racing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is what I still do. Because I tried some class racing, 10.5-inch tire racing a while back, but realized I didn't have enough money for that. So
it is a money sink, you know. I mean, maybe you can explain to me, because I've never been as big on the oh, there we go. I was trying to figure out why my headphones was all off. There we go. I have never been that big on the bracket racing side of it. I've always been a class racer.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, it's always been, well, the class racing, there's so many freaking rules. You know, it's so ridiculous how many things you got to deal with. That's why I've always stayed away from it.
Yeah.
You know.
Bracket racing to me is actually one of the simplest forms of racing, because you're pretty much racing yourself. Yeah. You know, you're going for the closest to zero package that you can get and hope that yours is better than the guy beside you. Yeah.
Well, I guess for me, though, there's so many ways you can lose at bracket racing as opposed to, like, list racing. List racing, there's only two ways you can lose. Either you go early or you lose, right? It's one or the other. Whereas in bracket racing, it's like, if you go early, you lose. Yeah. If you finish early, you lose. Yeah. If you finish behind the other guy, you also lose. Yeah. And it's like, so, I don't know, to me, that's like where it doesn't always make sense to me. Yeah. You know? Yeah,
it takes a special person to love it, I guess. Like I said, it's one of those that's meant for people that don't have a whole lot of, financial backing or stuff like that. So, you can get in there with your grocery getter and run on a Thursday or Saturday night and have a good time. It's decent money in some, a lot of local tracks and stuff don't pay a whole lot on the weekends, but if you're paying $50 a run for a chance to win $2,000, still pretty good money.
Yeah. I mean, that's not bad at all. Yeah. And it is, technically you can get in whatever car you want, and any car can enter a bracket race. Yeah. It does seem like most of them end up in a clapped out Fox body or maybe a Nova or something with headers dumping underneath in a carburetor. And
Novas, Camaros, S10s. It's just all your normal Mustangs.
Yeah.
They're a lot. And I happen to be one, a Nova fanatic myself.
Nova fanatic, okay. There you go. Do you have open headers up underneath the car? And
not underneath. They are fender exit headers.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, still a small tire car. I run a 10.5, 29.5 pro bracket radio on it.
Okay.
But,
all right, so you're not running on slicks?
No. I used to run slicks. Found out the car worked better and the tires last longer with the radials. So we went to those about 5 years ago and hadn't looked back. Been trying to get all the guys that I helped with the cars to go to them too. So
I haven't done the pro bracket radials yet. I've heard they're really good.
Oh yeah.
I've always been street class, so it has to be a DOT rated tire, which is an ET Street R. Yeah. That's what we get to run.
Yeah. They limit your tire pretty good, huh?
Yeah. So what's your setup in the car?
It's a 421 dark block, small block, power glide, Dana 60, 513 gear with the 10.5-inch tire.
Okay.
All NA. Runs cool weather. I'm on C12. Car runs 590s most time in cool weather, and typical bracket car. Totes the wheels about chest high for 100 feet and goes on out and 590s every pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Nice. Yep. Trans brake, all that stuff.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. 180 straight cut power guide. Trans brake.
So I know of you from all the transmission side stuff. You know, when I made the swap from an MT82 to a Turbo 400, I had a lot of people, you know, well, so I bought mine from a company out in, I think they're in Chicago. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but like their big claim to fame is they have transmissions that are in Street Outlaws cars and Birdman's car and stuff like that. It'll come to me after the podcast is done.
In Chicago. I'm trying to think of who's in Chicago.
Something performance. I'm not sure.
Performance or no, he's in. Trying to remember where he's at.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. That's where I got it. And I burned up that transmission twice on install. Right, and they kept saying it was my fault. They're like, you probably didn't get the shifter right. You probably didn't, you know, whatever. Yeah. Turns out it was the valve body wasn't sending fluid to third gear. Yeah. So, you know, that'll do it. You know. Yep. No fluid there, and it'll burn up basically as soon as you turn it on, as far as I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, they like to have fluid pressure. That's for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So when you're working on that kind of stuff, and someone's saying, "Hey, I've got this, you know, car, and I want to put a Turbo 400 or a Power Glide in it," how do you help somebody make that decision?
Obviously, you know, the first questions are, you know, how much power you put into it. You know, what do you intend to do with the car? You know, most of the street guys, you know, 400 Power Glide, third gear, second gear on Power Glide is 1-to-1. I mean, it's all as far as that goes, it doesn't know. On street cars, if the people are going to be riding around on the street and want to kind of stick with that, I lean more toward the 400. Simply for the fact, like back in my day in high school, I had a 350 transmission in my Nova that I drove in high school, and you know, it was always good with somebody. If we were riding 60, 65 mile an hour and somebody wanted to play, could pull it back to second gear and take off. Yep. Where a Power Glide at 65 mile an hour, you're not going to put it back.
You're not putting it back in first gear.
Yeah. So it's kind of a turd. Yeah. You know, when you just lay on it on an NA car from second gear at 60 mile an hour. So, you know, if it's just strictly track, you know, then I typically try to lean them toward a Power Glide. But, you know, I said a lot of decisions kind of go into it as far as what they're trying to do, if it's a nitrous car, if it's a turbo car, if you're going NA, you know, gear ratios, all that stuff, man. There's a lot of things to kind of factor into that equation.
Yeah, it's I ended up finding an older gentleman called Ronnie Johnson. He used to have RJ's transmissions back in the day. He's up there in Lewisburg. Okay, that's where he's at. Yeah. And he's one of these old transmission guys that doesn't like anybody. Yeah. He's retired. He doesn't want to do it anymore. Yeah. But if you can convince him to work on it, like the stuff he turns out is absolutely amazing. Yeah. Right. And like I don't know what your old shop used to be like or what behind your house looks like, but you go to his place and it's like skeletons of transmissions everywhere. And
yeah, we just moved shops, and I hauled 4 16-foot open trailer loads of cores away from the shop, and had to take them to my dad's house and store them because the shop we're at now doesn't have like any outside storage. So, and the shop space is about the same as what I had. So, yeah, I'm not trying to fill it up with core transmissions. But
what made you change shop location then?
We've been the same building for 21 years. Buddy of mine built the building 21 years ago. He owned a body shop, and we were on this little road in Raleigh called Bruton Place, and it always flooded every time it rained. Crabtree Creek run behind it. Yep. And we'd come in, and there was water up to the top of the desk in the office. he got tired of it, so he bought some land up off of Millbrook Road, built a building, and the spot that I was in, actually, he was going to rent it to just a carpet guy for using it as warehouse space, and I guess that guy backed out. So,
well, I mean, if you're selling carpets and you find out that the place you are getting floods.
Yeah, well, this was this new building.
Oh, the new building.
When they built a new building, they were going to do that. So he called me up and asked me if I wanted to rent the building, because I had moved up the hill a little bit on the Treywick Road, and so I said, yeah, I'll come out and take a look at it. So went over there, a brand new building. I mean, it was 2,000 square foot, office, bathroom. I didn't have to share the bathroom anymore in the building I was in. So we moved in. He told me in the beginning, he said, this is my retirement. So, we were there 21 years, and he come up 3 months ago, about 4 months ago now, and said, sorry guys, but I have sold my business and they need the whole building. So he said, you got 3 months to find somewhere else to go. And at that particular time, it seemed like it was almost an impossible feat, because prices have gone way higher from what I was paying rent there.
Yeah.
So we found a place here on this side of Raleigh toward Garner. And it's a nice building. It's a bigger building, but it's not as much shop space.
Okay. So the office is a little bit bigger, but the shop space is smaller.
Yeah, and then the guy that was beside me in the other building had to leave too. So, we had become good friends over the years. He'd been there 19 years. So we couldn't find a building for him. I said, well, just move in with me. We'll split the rent, and it'll help out both of us. Yeah. So we're kind of cramped, but we're in the process of still working through it and trying to get everything set up. So I think it'll be all right. Yeah. All
right. So what would you guys say is your bread and butter jobs that come in?
The transmission work is, where I make, most of the money at. Typically I used to do everything, man. I used to back half cars, roll cages, narrow rear ends. I did it all over the years, and I'm 45 years old. I had some problems back about 8 years ago with my heart. Ended up having several heart surgeries, and kind of had to slow down on the stuff that I was doing, and my body just wouldn't let me get up under dashes and stuff and weld anymore, contort and try to get into places that I was getting into. So
I'm a plumber, believe me, I understand that.
So I just kind of tried to start focusing on just the transmission work. We've had pretty good successes out of it. We've got some good cars out there, and they're showcased the transmissions and stuff pretty good. So
I know Stedman Williams is one of your guys.
Yeah.
And he runs a couple of your transmissions. We had him on the podcast a little while ago.
Yeah, he's got one in, and I built one for Dez on the Purge, and that Stedman drives, and just had to go through it last week. They had a issue. He had a stock case power glide, and the case busted at the back. Just typical in some of those cases. So bought a aftermarket case, switched everything over. Stedman took it home, put it in the car, and it wouldn't move. So I was like, well, he called me up, and I said, well, just bring me the car. And I checked the pressure. It had no pressure. So maybe the pump busted. Something's wrong there, Pulled it apart, and nothing wrong with it. Cleaned it up. Fluid tested it on the bench, and everything was working. Put it back in the car, and everything works as pretty as you can ask for.
What the heck?
So that's I was told a long time ago by a guy that does transmission work. He says, you'll beat your head in the wall trying to figure out what happened. He said, just fix it like you've never seen it, and keep on rolling.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually I have a technical question for you. A couple of technical questions. I have a friend. He's got an S550 Mustang. He was on a Power Glide. They
Yeah.
made the decision to swap to a Turbo 400. They put an M&M Turbo 400 in there, top of the line, everything you can buy. Right, cost them a lot of money.
Yeah.
It keeps burning up third gear,
Yeah.
and the reason it's doing it is because like when he first puts it in, it has like 150 psi of line pressure, and then it just drops and drops and drops. Like by 3 or 4 passes in, it's down to like 30 psi of line pressure. You know, if I called you and said, "Hey, this is what I'm dealing with," where would your brain go?
Well, you know, line pressure is made by the pump,
Mm-hmm.
you know, essentially. So, you know, sounds like to me it's got some sort of pump issue. Like it's, you know, you got your pump is making a whole lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Is, you know, it'll make over 300 psi, and you're regulating it down with a regulator in the pump.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, sometimes you get a pressure regulator problem where it's not quite adjusted for enough pressure. But if it starts out, you know, typically it's an aftermarket case 400, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, M&M, everything is aftermarket case.
So you mean typically on line pressure, you know, on that I would like to see around 250.
Really?
Yeah. So, you know, 2,500 RPM, you want to see about 250 psi out of it. So if it's already low, then, you know, I'd say, you know, it's not got enough pressure to start with,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why it's burning it up.
Okay.
You got to have the pressure to keep the clutches applied. If they're not applying, they're going to be slipping.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, that's one data point I've never had
yeah.
because I'm still in stock computer and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So when I called the transmission guys the first time, they're like, "What's your line pressure?" I'm like, who knows?
Yeah, well, I get that a lot. You know, they put it in, have an issue or something, and I ask them what the pressure is, and they're like, "I don't know, I've already got it out. I'm bringing it back to you." I'm like, well, you know, typically when they pick them up and I ask them, you know, tell them if you got an issue, you know, just pick up a gauge. If you don't have a gauge, bring me the car.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we'll check everything out before we pull it out, so we know what we're looking for at least.
So, at what point, you know, power wise, are you going to tell someone you need to go to an aftermarket case, right? And
yeah,
I'd say Power Glide and transmission and Turbo 400.
on a Power Glide, it's kind of a trick question because I've had stock case Power Glides put in cars that made, you know, 16, 17, 1800 horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
It's not advisable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I said the cases are weak.
Mm-hmm.
The main problem you have with a stock case Power Glide is mounting. They don't like to be solid mounted.
Okay.
So, you know, if you solid mount it to the car and the car nothing has any give,
Mm-hmm.
you've got a weak casted case.
It's going to
gonna
snap
find
something.
the weak point.
Yeah.
As far as power level on a Power Glide, I typically would say, you know, about 1,200 and above,
Mm-hmm.
you know, is when you would want to start looking at an aftermarket case, just for safety purposes. Like I said, if it busts and there's no blanket on it,
Mm-hmm.
fluid under the tires, you're gonna have a bad day.
Yeah.
400 stock case, I mean, 2,000 or above.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen stock case 400s just right on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd say when you start getting into about 2,500 is when I would probably say an aftermarket is absolutely necessary.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Just because at that power level, when something goes wrong, it goes catastrophically wrong, or
again, not really. I mean, the cases are strong.
mm-hmm.
The problem the stock cases have, and we correct it with a few pieces, is like around the second gear clutches. There's lugs in the case, and on one side there's a spot that's probably 4 or 5 inches long that has no lugs.
Mm-hmm.
So all the pressure, you know, you're putting 200 psi behind the clutch pack. Every time it hits, it tries to bust the lugs out of the case.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they make pieces that are case savers, and you make thicker, better snap rings and stuff to put in the case to help the stock 400 case hold up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I said, the it's pretty amazing what a 400 will hold up to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in a rebuilding season right now.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit for me, end of 2023, or not where I wanted 2023 to end, but where it did end is I blew up my motor out there at Rockingham.
Yeah.
Got cylinders 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're in a rebuilding year. We decided we're just going to take the year off because I don't have it unending money.
Yeah.
And I'm rebuilding the car. We're changing a couple things on it. I've been Turbo 400 for a while, and that was part of the question was like, okay, with the power that we're going to try to make, do we need to do an aftermarket case or not? Yeah. I don't think I'm going to get to 2,500. That's a little, for the kind of, because I'm a Coyote guy. I love these Coyotes. You're really leaning on it to make 2,500 out of it,
Yeah.
Or you're Brett LaSala.
And there's other guys out there that, that say, about 2,000 is the mark where they would start doing. But like I said, like a FTI, stage 5 is a stock case, and they advertise it for like 2,200 horsepower.
Yeah.
So, they'll. I think as long as you're staying under that 2,200 kind of range, stock case is pretty good on that application.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how much into like gear ratios do you really get with someone, or do you just have someone say, hey, what do you want? And you put it in, or do you really get into the nitty gritty with them?
Yeah, I said it depends on what they're doing. If they're class racing and stuff, we try to get into the gear ratios a little bit more with them. Obviously, Fox body Mustangs, I get a lot of those, and Power Glides, and they want the car is already going to try to flip over backwards to start with. And, if it's a nitrous car, they're going to hit it hard off the line and it's going to pick the wheels up. And so, obviously you can get the Power Glide, I think the lowest you can go is like a 158 gear ratio. So you can tone the car down a bunch. The 400 has a lot more gear ratio probabilities. You can mess with it a whole lot more. But then again, you get into more money when you start messing with the gear ratios in the 400. A lot of guys are using the 400 and making it a 2-speed. So you got a 148 first gear using a stock ratio 400 and making it a 2-speed. So I just did one the other day, was a 177. I think it's a 177 gear ratio. It was for a drag and drive car. But, it was a lot of nice billet.
That's going to lug that thing down. At a stoplight.
Yeah.
They're going to put that thing in gear. It's going to go.
Yeah, it was a aftermarket case. It was an ATI transmission originally, and they said he had about 5,000 miles on it doing the drag and drive stuff and the passes, and just wanted to kind of check it over, and took it down, and it had burnt the band up pretty good, and reverses on the band, and then you got your trans brake apply is off the band too. So we fixed that. We ended up having to replace the outer shell on that high dollar gear set. And then he wanted to make it a lockup, so that was my first endeavor with a lockup 400 transmission. Took a little bit of learning, but I think we're comfortable with it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard from a lot of guys, they're like, if you want to do a lockup, you better get really used to nut and bolting your car, because you turn that lockup on and everything just starts rattling loose.
Yeah. Yeah, we had put it together, and I'm kind of good friends with Mike Graham up at Virginia Speed Racing Transmissions too. So he helps me out. He's been in it a little bit longer than I have, so he's got a lot of knowledge of fluid dynamics and stuff to that I don't quite have. So every now and then I have to call him and bounce stuff off of him. But I actually put that one together and took it up to his transmission dyno before we put it back in the car, and everything worked great on the dyno. Put it back in the car, and like it just didn't. It was trying to spool the car up 2,500. It was trying to shut the motor off. Like it wasn't two-step. It was just lugging everything down, and come to find out, we had on the inside of the pump stator, there's supposed to be some rings in there that didn't show up with the pump. So it being my first one, I was not sure. I didn't know they were supposed to be in there, but we got it pulled back down and figured out pretty quick. So
you know now.
Yeah, that's what I tell people. If you're not learning something every day, it's time to quit.
Yeah. How important is it, when you're considered a professional in the field, right? It's like, I'm guessing with 20-something years, almost coming on 30 years of doing this, you're at like what, 30, 40,000 hours, or no, you're probably at like 50, 60,000 hours really of doing this.
Yeah, I built my first transmission. I was 11 years old. I built a turbo 350, and I'm 45 now.
How important is it going on just to keep learning and also to admit you don't know everything?
Oh yeah, it's pretty important to me. I run across people, and they build transmissions, and like you said, somebody has an issue with it, and they're like, oh no, it's nothing I did. It's got to be something you did putting it in, or it's got to be this. Like, man, I'm human. I make mistakes like anybody else. I think that's why the business is as strong as it is, because even if it's not my mistake, I'm gonna do everything I can to figure out what's going on with it. And help the customer out. That's just the way my dad taught me. So, I'm gonna bend over backwards trying to make it right either way. But I say it again. If you feel like you know everything, I feel like it's the time for you to just kind of retire.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's I've passed the 10,000 hours of doing plumbing mark, right? I realized I passed that like 3 years ago. So 3 or 4 years ago, right? And I would say I'm a professional, right?
Yeah.
90% of the jobs I show up on, I'm like, it's done, right?
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing, right? But then there's still stuff that I got to learn. There's still stuff I open it up and go, huh. Like I've never seen this before, and what I've heard is that, like, I think I'm going to get the quote wrong. It's the less you know of something, the higher you're going to rate yourself in that thing. Yeah. And the more you know of something, the lower you're going to rate yourself.
Oh yeah.
In the amount that you think that you know.
Oh yeah.
Right, and it goes to the whole, like, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. There's just so much you could learn.
Oh yeah.
Right, about any particular subject.
And the more you know, in my case, I'm always second guessing myself on stuff that I know it. Like, I'm putting a transmission together, and I know that I've done this a million times, but I go back and think to myself, well, is there a better way of doing that, or is there something I could be doing differently? And then you got to kind of go back and look at it, and that's one thing that Mike has tried to teach me is just know how the stuff works. If you know how it works, then you can figure out better ways of doing it or manipulating it. Because putting all this power to a lot of these transmissions, there's a lot of modifying to them, and that's what I'm trying to learn now is what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. Well, it's when I eventually took my transmission to Ronnie, because we'd burned it up twice, and I was like, I'm not sending it back to the same guy again. Yeah. To get, oh, you did it wrong, and he'll send it back to me again. Yeah. Right. I found Ronnie through a friend, and he disassembled it, and it's amazing how quickly you guys can disassemble one of those things. Yeah. Just like, all of a sudden my transmission's in a table about this size, and it's all over it. He takes that valve body, he's going through it, he goes, there's a problem.
Yeah.
right? And I was like, how do you know? He's just like, well, when he's like, you have to modify this for what you want to do, and he's like, and they didn't Dremel out a piece to allow the fluid to go through.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, there you go. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I had a 700 the other day come from a local guy, and it had, 700s are very finicky to start with. So, if you don't have the cables adjusted on them right, stuff like that, it will burn up in a matter of a mile. So the guy put it in. He was just having all kinds of issues. Said it didn't shift right. It just didn't feel good. So he had put a shift kit in it himself, him and a buddy. And he said steel just didn't.
How hard could it be?
Yeah. So I get it apart, and same thing. I'm kind of looking in. Third bands burn up. 3-4 clutches are burn up. Get to looking, same thing. Valve body. Take the TV valve out of the valve body, and there's two parts of the valve, and there's a cold roll pin for each piece. The very back side of the valve, you pull the cold roll pin and pull the valve out, and then you have to put the new updated valve in it and put the cold roll pin back in. I guess the guy that built it got his attention called or something, and he put the pin in it and then stuck the valve in. So the valve wasn't going all the way in and seating properly. Yeah. And it was just dumping all the pressure over into the circuit. So that's the guy I tore down with him standing there and showed him. I said, yeah, this is what caused everything. I said, it was a very simple issue, but it is going to cost quite a bit to fix the issue because everything got burned up in the process. So I said there's a lot of people out there that are doing it, and it just takes a lot of patience and little distraction. You can't if somebody comes up and trying to talk to you, you just kind of step away from it and come back to it when you're alone.
Yeah, you have to be exact.
Yeah.
No, I it's amazing when you're talking about this stuff how much of it sounds like working on certain plumbing things for me. With pressures and seals and valves and stuff like that. I'm a certified backflow tester.
Okay.
Which also means that you have to be a certified backflow rebuilder.
Yeah. And
I have to take apart these things, and every company builds it different for some reason. I don't know why. They all think that they have a better idea, and so you have to become a mini expert on disassembling and reassembling because, 90% of them are in businesses, and it's amazing how people panic when you turn their water off.
Yeah.
And you're just like, look, the water's going to be off for half an hour. You can hold it for half an hour. You're fine, right? Well, the 2 seconds after you turn it off, somebody all of a sudden is going to have explosive diarrhea or something. That's so being precise on getting stuff like that back together. Yeah. I can equate it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. They're coming next week to check the backflow at the new shop. They sent a letter over that the other day.
Yeah. You should have called me, man.
I didn't know. I sent it to the landlord. That's his. Yeah, that's his deal.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. It's it's something that the city requires. Because basically the idea is that they want the water to go to you and the water never to come back.
Yeah.
And what can happen is if there's a fire, a couple businesses over, and the fire trucks come over and hook up to that hydrant, those things are so powerful, they will literally suck all of the water out of the local system as they're trying to put the fire out. So all of the water inside your building will also get sucked into the main system.
Okay.
And if you have a mop sink or, a utility sink with a little hose hanging off of it that you're cleaning transmissions off with, and you got oil and nasty stuff in there, it'll suck all the water right back out of that sink, right into the drinking supply.
Yeah.
Not necessarily something you want to do.
Yeah.
So the idea for the backflow is allow the water to come to your business, but never be able to go back.
Okay.
That's the idea behind it.
Yeah.
And it's got built-in redundancies inside of it. We call them a dual check or a reduced pressure zone. You probably have a reduced pressure zone at your building.
Yeah, I know there's a bunch of valves.
Yeah.
Kind of in a line there.
Basically, the way that it works is you have your first check. As it comes in, it pushes down a spring and a valve, right, as the water comes through, and it's got a relief underneath it. And if the pressure coming from, the outgoing side is more than the pressure from the incoming side, it'll open that relief.
Okay.
It's a 2 PSI difference there.
Yeah.
So it's very tight. So like if there's, 60 PSI on this side and 70 PSI on this side, you're going to see that thing start dumping water out of it.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to allow it to go back. It's just going to dump it straight out. And then there's another check built in after that.
Yeah.
Just as a
precaution.
As a precaution.
Yeah.
And I actually have to go back for a recertification class next month. So, yay. I get to sit around for the guy to tell me to do what I've been doing for the last 3 years. So,
Yeah.
Well, it's part of it also is they retrain us on the proper way to do it because we all figured out the cheat way to do it.
Yeah.
So we show up there and do like the quick way of getting all the numbers, and like what I've argued with the instructors is like it doesn't matter which way we do it. We get the same numbers, and even if it's the cheat way to do it, it still tells me whether it passed or failed.
Yeah.
Right? I just didn't have 87 steps to get to the 3 steps that I just took.
Yeah.
But
there's always several different ways of coming to the same conclusion.
Yeah. It basically my little machine that I have, all it's looking at is for pressure differential, which I'm assuming when you guys are testing them, with air or on a dyno, that's basically the same thing it's looking for. Is like when you first gear, second gear, there should be a pressure differences, I'm guessing.
Yeah, most time you've got, your line pressure is your line pressure. It's going to stay pretty close in your forward gears.
Mm-hmm.
We're checking line pressure, we're checking cooler charge pressure. There's on a lockup, you got your lockup pressure. I mean, there's several different ones that you're testing on the dyno. So you've got different gauges reading different things. You don't want your cooler, your converter charge pressure is what eats up thrust in motors. If it gets up over a certain amount of pressure, it's going to try to swell that converter and push it into the back of the crank. So it eats up thrust, and LS motors and I think Ford mod motors are really susceptible to it. So, small block Chevrolets and stuff like that, big block Chevrolets, I guess the way the thrust is made in them, they're not as bad about doing it, but they can still do it. So,
I know for the Coyotes, they came out with a Torrington bearing, I think is what it's called.
The thrust.
Yeah, and it basically just adds a little bit more protection against that.
Yeah. I've had a lot of them come back with, transmissions have been built, other shops or whatever, and they come back with a thrust issue, and they're like, it's tore my motor up 3 times, and I said, well, let's check it out and see, and you take it apart, and that's another thing. A lot of people don't know about the converter charge stuff, and needing to jet it, and you got to jet it to what you have. If you've got a input shaft that's got a 1/8-inch hole in it, you're going to have a different size jet compared to one that's got a 16th-inch hole in it. So all that stuff kind of plays into effect. If you have a bushing in the end of the stator, it's going to be different than if you're running no bushing. So it all kind of you want to get that cooler pressure down. That's why people go to dump valves and stuff like that, trying to get all that stuff where it needs to be. Yeah.
So explain the dump valve thing to me, because that's the tuner I've been talking to has been like, oh, I want you to put a dump valve on the transmission, and in my primitive brain, the best that's been described to me was they do that to spin the converter up quicker.
Yeah, you can manipulate the converter charge pressure with the dump valve, and you can actually change how the converter reacts, how it stalls. You can open the valve and close the valve going down the track to where you can make the converter tighter, looser, whatever you need to do. most of the time, I've seen them. So I try to set the charge pressure on most of them to about 70 psi, and then I've seen people dump them all the way to 0, or just depending on what they're trying to do. So basically, you got the converter, you got feed into it, and you got the fluid trying to come back out of the converter down the stator tube to the input through the input shaft. And that's what you're controlling the rate in which that fluid is coming back down that input shaft. If they're not jetting and stuff right, that's where you run into the thrust issues because the fluid can't get out of the converter quick enough.
So it's pumping fluid into it and can't get the fluid out of it. So that's why it's ballooning.
Then it's trying to balloon, and that's years ago they started with the anti-balloon plates and stuff like that to try to help with it. But it's like everybody else, they find other ways of doing it, and now they figured out they can do it with hydraulic pressure, basically. So you can relieve it. Some people are putting the dump valves in, and they're not even monitoring the pressure. So it's kind of it's not really doing you any good if you're not going to monitor it and see what it's doing.
Yeah, but it's that's. We're swapping to an aftermarket ECU so I can monitor everything.
Yeah, and you can do it manually too. I mean, you can put a transducer in the line or whatever you need to do and do it with a gauge. But that's the good thing about all the aftermarket like Holley, HP, and Dominator and Fuel Tech stuff.
We're going Fuel Tech.
Yeah, you can hook that in and do anything you need to. I mean, adjust it to the slightest little thing. So.
Yeah, and it's nice because it's all controlled inside the Fuel Tech, so it's not like you got one system for the transmission and one system for the motor. And we were actually using a nitrous system to shift the Turbo 400. It's I had the nitrous outlet, whatever their system is called. I can't remember what it's called right now. But it had 2 stages for nitrous. So I used stage 1 for nitrous on the car. We were a supercharged nitrous setup last year, and I used stage 2 for the shifter, for the air shifter, and I just basically set it so I was like, once you hit this RPM, just 100%, give me everything, and worked pretty good actually.
Yeah, we do the same thing with delay box on the bracket car. We use it to pull timing out of the car. We use it to shift the car. I mean, there's it's basically just an RPM switch. So you're just using different stages of it or whatever. So
So I one of my buddies with his super fancy transmissions, he's got like 3 dump valves on there. Like I guess he's got like 1 external and 2 internal, or it might be 2 external and 1 internal.
Yeah, most of the time they're doing, you can do 3 external. Most of the time they go 2 external. There are internals. The lockup that I did the other day everything was internal on it. It was internal lockup, internal trans brake, internal dump. So I had a pan full of solenoids. There's
not a lot of room inside those pans as far as I can tell.
No, it's not a whole lot. It was just it was enough to get the filter over the top of it and get the pan back on it. But
there you go.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
So for most of us racing, what kind of fluid do you recommend us to run?
I personally like Deck 6.
Deck 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the 400s and the Power Glides. A lot of guys will use tractor fluid.
The converter was a little loose and we needed to tighten it up, so we just poured straight I think it was the 64 in there.
Yeah, the thing about the tractor fluid is, it's just got to be it's got to be changed a whole lot more. It's going to break down a whole lot quicker under heat than transmission fluid is formulated for the heat wheel.
Yeah, we changed it every 30 passes, I think.
Yeah, a lot of guys doing, like the class racing and stuff, they've got their cooler and everything for between rounds, so they're just constantly flushing the fluid. So for them to run the tractor fluid is not that big a deal. But most of my guys are still street cars, stuff like that. So I like to run a deck 6 in it.
Okay. Okay. What about adding a aftermarket cooler to it, like a transmission cooler?
Oh yeah.
Would you recommend that for just basically every single setup, or?
I'd do an aftermarket cooler on everything I do. Mm-hmm. If it's even like if you brought me your 07 Tahoe mm-hmm. and I was building the 4L60E in it, I'd do away with the radiator cooler completely. Because I've always had in my mind, it's hard to cool hot fluid with hot water. Mm-hmm. So, if you got 200-degree water, mm-hmm. how cool can you actually get your fluid?
About 200 degrees.
Yeah. So, we do that, and it's actually part of my warranty. Mm-hmm. If you don't put a good, cooler for what you're doing on it, then I don't warranty the transmission. So, mm-hmm. I use most time I got a generic couple of different sides, ones that I use from the Raleigh on the stock stuff, and the guys that on the race cars, I've seen them use like a dual pass, or to get depending on how much money you want to spend, they've got a cooler for just about anything. So the main problem I have with the coolers and customers is they want to mount them flat on a floorboard underneath the car.
I built about that much space into mine.
Yeah. You if you're going to do it under the car, I kind of try to get you to tilt it, maybe like a 30-degree angle. Mm-hmm. Just something where the wind can kind of,
as the air's coming over it.
Yeah.
Mine also has a fan built onto it. So.
Yeah. The fan helps, but you got to have that. You got to have some space for it to pull air through it. Turbo guys, I know you get intercoolers and all kinds of stuff up front, and there's just not a lot of room for a cooler. So I can understand the placement, but when we do them most time in the shop, I'll try to put it under the back of the car, get it, turn. Like I said, turn at an angle where air can run across it. Something.
That's where mine's at. It's on the back of the car. Yeah.
Yeah, not a fan of them laid flat.
Yeah. Have you messed much with the 6R80s?
I've done a few stock. I have not done many, like aftermarket stuff to them. I've got a customer that I've done some transmissions for, and he's got one now that he wants to bring me in, and I told him if he didn't mind being a guinea pig, we'd try some stuff out on it. So. Yeah,
it's I think it's Midnight Performance and a couple others now. Lund is one of them. They figured out how to turn the 6-speed into a 3-speed.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it just drives me nuts because there's a lot of these guys that are like sticking to the overdrive class. Yeah. They're just like, I'm overdrive, but they're running a 6R80 with 3 speeds in it.
Yeah.
And part of that swap out is you get rid of your overdrive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so
gray area.
Yeah, I'm like, you have as many gears as I do, and actually the same gears that I do, but I'm banned from your class and you're not. This doesn't make sense to me.
Or I have a 400 with a gear vendor, but I'm not using the gear vendor.
Yeah, I did try that one time at a. I was, I went to. I ended up just testing tuning for the day, but they had an overdrive class.
Yeah.
And now I don't have a gear vendor.
Yeah.
I'll be very clear about this. I do not have a gear vendor on there, right?
Yeah.
But I just tried to enter the race just, because they didn't seem to have that many guys.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, I'll see if I can get in. And they're like, oh, you have a Turbo 400. I was like, yeah, but I got a gear vendors on there, so it's an overdrive. And they literally had to have a huddle. They were like, and they went away. They had to have a huddle, and they're like, because they didn't specify that it had to be factory. They just said overdrive, right? And so then they came back and they're like, no, what we meant by the rule was factory overdrive, so we're not going to let you in. I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm just going to test and tune for the night. All right, but I tried. And it was pretty funny. But that's always been my thing of like every time they're like it has to be overdrive. I'm like, oh, I'll just put gear vendors on there.
Yeah.
That's overdrive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you messed with many of the gear vendor stuff, or?
I've done a few of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get a lot of guys with 4x4 trucks and street rods and stuff, and they want to do 700s. And 700 is not a very good transmission to start with. I build them, and I've got some that hold pretty decent power out there, but it's just with that cable shifted stuff, it's just not. It's not optimal.
It's not meant for high horsepower and to last.
Yeah. You know, it's if you have any little hiccup with the cable breaking or anything to that effect, you might as well just go ahead and pull it out. So, you know, a lot of times if we're building them, we go ahead and take the lockup out of them to kind of help out with stuff too. So, yeah, these guys want to do that because they want overdrive. So I try to convince them, you know, well, why don't we do a 4L60E?
The 4L60 or the 4L80?
Yeah, you know, 4L80 is good. It's bigger, bulkier. You know, a lot of the older cars with the floor pans and stuff, people don't want to modify their floor pans. So, you know, I can build they did in the early model 4L60Es were basically in a 700 case. So it's, you know, pretty compact, and you can build it up just as nice as you can a later model 4L60E. So I keep a lot of them cores around where I can go to do that for the guys what's trying to put overdrive in their 69 Camaro or something to that effect. Buy a controller. You know, US Shift makes a real good controller for them. Try to go that way. And some people are just old school. They don't want electronic anything. So
it's the government, man. The government's going to come and shut off the electricity one of these days.
Yeah, so that's when I go into, well, why don't we do like a 400 with a gear vendor or something to that effect? And you know, it's pricey. Gear vendors, I think, like $3,500, but it's well worth it. I've never seen one of them fail. I've seen them in cars that are making 3,000 horsepower.
I've only ever seen one fail, and it was because the guy didn't put fluid in it.
Yes. I mean, they're tough. I've got a few of them. One's in a mid 80s 4-wheel drive Suburban. I did a supercharged 383 400 with the gear vendor, and it's got transfer case. I mean, the transmission's 14 foot long. But
I was about to say that sounds like a long transmission right there.
Yeah, and the drive shaft's like 2 foot long.
Yeah.
But you know, it works real good, and the guys have been riding on it for a few years now. Got a Challenger, like a 72 Challenger. It's got a torque flight that we built with a gear vendor on it, and now they're brutal when they lock up. Like when it comes in, it bam. I mean, you know, it comes in.
Yeah.
but yeah, they're nice. I like messing with them.
Yeah. So how much difference can you make on stuff? I guess all of it's based on pressure, but like I know when Ronnie built that transmission for me and I put it into gear, like it was like ka-chunk.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you changed something. Like you like how much of that can you affect? Really? Like how tight something is when it hits.
A lot of it is clutch clearance. Some of it is factory transmissions. Most of the time are built with waves in the drums, so you've got one steel in the pack that's wavy, and it's called a cushion spring just for that effect. So you know, guys, you know, middle-aged guys or whoever don't want something like that, they get into their car and crank it up, put it in gear. It's smooth engagement. That cushion spring takes some of that away. Well, you know, if you're building them for racing purposes, just chunk that cushion spring out and add an extra steel. You know, we'll just add an extra steel there and be done with it. I still, like on some of the 400s, depending on what they're doing, will still use the cushion spring in forward, just so that when they pull it in gear, it doesn't have that just
violent,
violent engagement. You know, if it's full-fledged race car, violent engagement, just you have to deal with that.
Yeah, send her home, buddy. Yeah. It was funny because I am surrounded by gray area helpers. You know, everyone who's helped me on this car definitely like. They've always told me, send me the rules that you're working under, and we'll build it to that. So last year, or 2 years ago, everyone complained about me having a trans brake on the car, right? Because nobody else had one. They all had 6R80s or 10R80s or 4L80s.
Yeah.
So they all complained about me having a trans brake and them not. And it's like, well, it's not like you could add one if you wanted to, but it's not in the rules that I can't have it, right?
Yeah.
So I'd kill everybody on the tree, whatever, right? And there was two other guys in the class that did have a Power Glide and a Turbo 400, and so us three kind of ran away with the class, right? So the next year for that class, they changed the rules and they said foot brake only.
Yeah.
And so I went to Ronnie and I was like, man, I can't use the trans brake anymore. I'm like, I'll just disconnect it and connect it to itself, so it's a closed loop system. It can't. Come on.
Yeah.
And he goes, why are they doing that? I was like, well, whatever. And I was like, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to foot brake this thing. And he goes, I'll fix it.
Yeah.
I go, what do you mean you'll fix it? And he goes, don't worry.
Yeah.
He's like, we're gonna change your gear set. And I was like, all right. And he goes, also give me your converter back.
Yeah.
So I gave him the converter back. He sent it off to JW Converters down in Florida.
Yeah.
And he put a 275 first gear in it.
Yeah.
And I think it was like a 180 or like a 160 second gear in it.
Yeah. 248 and 148 from the factory. So, try to get that leaving up some. Yeah.
Yeah. And what he told me when I got it all back was he's like, all right, just stand on it. He's like, don't try to build up pressure. Don't try to, foot brake it. He's like, as soon as you think it's time to go, just step on that gas and put it to the floor. That sucker would pull wheelies. And just boing.
Yeah.
From idle. It like threw off the guys because the year before they're used to, me getting on it.
Yeah.
And now just.
Yeah, that you talking about that? The guys complaining that you had the trans brake reminds me of the a famous Boost Doctor quote. They'll sell you one too.
They'll sell you one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been trying to get him on here, man. Ira is a difficult man to nail down. Yeah,
he stays busy, quite busy.
Yeah.
That was one of the funniest things I ever heard, and I can't remember what they were. He was at a track one night, and they were complaining about something that he was that he had, and he looked them straight in the face, and they'll sell you one too.
Yeah, that's they guys complain about too much money in racing, and I guess for me, what I've always said is if you're worried about too much money in racing, get into bracket racing.
Yeah,
right. You can just find your number that you can run on, and you can run right there.
Yeah.
But if you want to be in list racing, get over it.
Well, it's the gray area, like you said. You got people that come out with these classes, and I think David and them with the 252 have had some issues too. They come out with a class that to try to circumvent some of that and make it more of a daily driver class or not so much an extreme street class, and everybody's all into it, and then you have the guy over here that's got the gray area rules, and he's comes in and
that was me.
Yeah. And then they're like, well, you ruined the class. Like, well, no, it didn't ruin it, just adapted. So you'll either have to go with him or make a different class.
Yeah. I mean, so I've run 252 for a while.
Yeah.
When I got into it, I was doing the 590 class.
Yeah.
Right. But the way he had it set up, you couldn't use a delay box. You couldn't use that other stuff. So it was heads up, but it was just 590. That's as fast as you could run, right?
Index racing.
And so it's index racing.
Yeah.
It's not really bracket. And we had a pretty good year. And then he went on to modern street, and it just had so many rules that it killed the class.
Yeah.
Right? I think there was 6 of us all year. And then this last year, so the way he had set up the rules with foot brake only and all that stuff, it basically said, it was okay, if you have a turbo, you can't be in this class because you can't build up
boost.
You can't build up boost, so you're not going to stand a chance, right? So we all looked at it and went, oh, dual power adder. Just supercharged nitrous. That's going to be the way to go.
Yeah.
So the 3 of us that ran at the front of that class were supercharged nitrous, and we ran away with the class again.
Yeah.
And so he changed it this last year to add a ton of weight to that class, where if I'd stayed the way that my car was, I would have had to add 500 pounds to the car.
Yeah.
It would have had to weigh 4,250. If I just stayed how the car was.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not adding
Yeah.
500 pounds to my car.
Yeah, I'm not at Hellcat weight here.
Yeah, yeah, and like there was only one car in that group that could have not changed anything, and you know, I don't want to accuse anyone of changing it to make one person happy. You know, that's not what I'm trying to get at, but it definitely would have made that guy happy.
Yeah.
You know, where like basically the class is built around his car.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, so it's like if you wanted a trans brake, you had to add 100 pounds. If you had a Coyote or an LS or a Gen 3 Hemi, you had to add 100 pounds.
Yeah.
If it was dual power adder, you had to add 100 pounds. If you had front exit exhaust, 100 pounds. You know, and I'm like, you know, by the time you add it all up, I was just like, damn.
Yeah, I've always just said, you know, put them out there, tell them no traction control and this tire.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the tire be the limiting factor.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So actually, I have a class coming up in November at Galot that I'm running.
Yeah.
That's going to be for their No Time Hustle.
Yeah.
What they're running. I'm putting together a streetcar class.
They're doing that on what, Thursday nights?
It'll be a Friday night. It'll be a Friday night into Saturday event. November 8th and 9th.
All right.
I'm trying to get interest in it and people to throw some money into the pot to actually get some good car count out there. The rules are super simple. It's 3,700 pounds with driver.
Yeah.
Right? That's going to cut out all your race cars right there.
Yeah.
You know, unless someone wants to add a bunch of weight to their car, which you know none of these guys are going to do.
Yeah.
Right? Registered and insured, and I am going to check.
Yeah.
You know, like I can't tell you how many streetcar ones I've been to where they're like, you know, you see that in the rules.
Yeah.
They never check. Not one time have they ever checked.
Yeah, they got the tags off their town and country on it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, DOT rated tire.
Yeah.
You know, so it actually has to have a DOT rating. So that takes out a bracket radial. That takes out a pro radial.
Yeah.
A pro radial it's got a DOT stamp, but it's not rated.
Yeah.
Meaning that the DOT looked at it,
Yeah.
and the DOT went, no. No. Right? But a lot of guys have said, well, because it's got the stamp on it, it means that it's rated. I'm like, it's rated? No. That's what it's rated. And either a 15-mile cruise or a 10-minute idle in the lanes.
Yeah.
And that's it. My rules are super simple. There's a ton of guys that can meet those rules, you know, but it's like the rules I have, I'm going to be strict on.
Yeah.
You know, so what we're aiming for right now, like I put $500 in it. I've got another guy who's put $500 in it. I think the track is going to match what we're putting in.
Yeah.
And then it'll be $100 entry. All the money goes on top of the pot. So, you know, right now I've got about 10 guys that are committed to it. I'm really hoping to get like 20. You know, get a $4,000 pot out there for these guys to win. That would be super awesome.
Yeah, that's what the money brings it in.
Yeah.
That's what I try to tell these tracks about the bracket racing. And I say you got to. Most of these guys can either run your track for $1,200 on a Saturday night or run this track for $5,000. So if you want to bring car count in, you got to up your game a little bit on the purse. But
yeah, I think the problem for a lot of the tracks is that like bracket racing just doesn't bring in a big crowd to watch it.
Yeah, not a lot of spectator.
It's not really a spectator thing because like, you know, each race is going to be generally pretty much the same as the race that just happened. You know.
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, back when I was a kid, you went to one. I mean, the stands were packed, but there also wasn't a lot of other stuff going on either as far as classes and cars and stuff. So, you definitely the racing you get now. You see the videos and you go to the track and just the whole start line is everybody's everywhere. So we've gone to World Cup finals and stuff, and
dude, I want to go to that race so bad.
You couldn't even get up to the fence at the start line. So, I think we went to 2012.
Oh, it's gotten even bigger since then. You know, like it's one of the few races that every single day of it is sold out and nobody leaves. The entire time. You know,
God, that was a race for. We went with I used to work for Mayhem Motorsports, and we had a vet that we had fixed there for it was a customer's car, that ended up being kind of a customer / shop car. So we went to load it on Wednesday, and the fuel pump give up. Had a big welding fuel pump on it. So we just pushed it in the trailer. We said somebody down there will have a rotor or something for it. So we get down there and we missed the first qualifying session because of the fuel pump. And we had just switched the car to Power Guide. So we were the second IRS Corvette with a Power Guide in the world, basically. I think it was Keith Berry, I think was the first one. But so we bought this whole setup from East Coast Supercharging to put the Power Guide in the car. And second qualifying, we made the mega pass, and car just wouldn't leave, wouldn't run. It lost all the transmission was just gone. It was blowing through it on the start line. Yeah. So I pulled the transmission out. We went through it. Third qualifying pass, same thing. Just did a burnout, went up to the line, trans brake wouldn't hold. It was just pushing through first gear. So I ended up going through this thing. It was 5 qualifying sessions, so I went through the transmission 3 times in between qualifying. And the last qualifying session, I was actually in the ATI trailer. I was building it on a plastic table in the trailer. And the last qualifying session, I went down to the ATI trailer and told that guy, I said, hey, man, you mind just looking while I'm tearing this thing apart? And he said, well, I'm just a parts guy. He said, I don't do any transmission building or anything. So I said, well, do you mind if I just go ahead and tear it down in the trailer? You had a little tear down station. So he said, no, go ahead. I tore it down there. I had fluid all over this man's trailer. And then they call, I got it tore apart and looking at it, and it's every time I turn around, it's frying the high gear clutches in it. So I'm sitting there and looking at it, and I hear Hot Rod versus X275. Okay. To the lanes.
To the lanes.
Yeah, and I've got the transmission sitting here in a million pieces. So I start putting it back together, and, man had a credit card on file at the ATI trailer that weekend. So put it back together, and I hear just a god-awful noise. And, you don't ever want to hear anybody wrecking their car, but, it was like somebody was watching out for us. They had a bad wreck. And give us time to get the transmission back together and back in the car.
Shut down the lanes for a couple hours.
So we get the car, and they call us back. We're in the process of putting it back in. They call back to the lanes, and, Jeff, the guy there at Mayhem, he was driving the car, and he's in the car with the fire suit and everything on. It's still on jack stands. So we fire the car up, and there's something going on with it. And I told him, I said, just give me a minute. The trans brake wouldn't work. So I get back under there, and I'm looking, and I had took a spare transmission that I used for my car with me. So I had pulled the valve body out of that transmission and put in it last time. I said, there's got to be something. Pressure regulator, something is going on. So I put that valve body in there, and trans brake wouldn't work. I had used his solenoid with the other valve body, and it just the throw won't right on it. So we got that figured out and get it to the lanes. And I told him, I handed him a block of wood, and he said, what's the block of wood for? I said, that's for when you get to staging lanes, you need to throw it under the wheel because you're not going to have park. And he said, well, why I'm not going to have park? I said, because I'm going to make sure the car goes down the track this pass. This is something in this linkage, the way they made the cable linkage, wasn't allowing the car to go all the way to first gear. So, that's one thing I found on that last time when I got in there and was putting it together. I said, pull it to low, and was going through the gear. And when I pulled the pin out, it popped back. So I just adjusted it in low gear and handed him a block of wood. So we went out there, and 8:18, we qualified in the middle of the field,
It's amazing because now an 8 won't get you into any of the fields.
Yeah, we went first round, and we were 770s. It was a 770 bracket car, and ended up running up the class that weekend. But You know, I said it was. We had a heck of a time getting that runner-up place on that car that weekend.
So to get into World Cup finals this year, you know, so you get an opportunity to apply for it if you were in it last year, right? And then if you decide not to do it, they start pulling people in. But you have to provide, I think it's 5 time slips from this year when you apply, right? If you don't have 5 time slips, and they all have to be faster than, I think even for the slowest class, it has to be faster than a 792. Yeah. Right? If it's not faster than a 792, you're not going to get in. Yeah. Like that they have that many people trying to get into that race.
2012, they were knocking trees down when we were coming in. They were on the other end of the track with bulldozer knocking trees down, making more parking.
Yeah.
We were down past the quarter-mile mark when we come in.
If you want to get any kind of reasonable parking, you have to be there Sunday night, the week before the race, right? And they'll open it up on Monday, and you can park, right? But if you show up on like Monday night, you're way out there in the boondocks.
Yeah, I think we showed up on Wednesday.
Yeah,
and they were. I said it was. They were literally out there knocking trees down to make more parking.
Yeah, but I love huge events like that, right? You know, World Cup Finals, FL2K is another big one now. TX2K is another big one. Like, I think TX2K is really like the kickoff, I think, for everybody of the season. Yeah. You know, it's like the first real game of the year, right? And then after that, you have all the other races that come through. Yeah. You know, and then you end off the season with World Cup Finals. Yeah. And I think the reason a lot of people like that is because the diversity of cars that you get there. Oh yeah. You know, like
you can see the guy getting run down by Honda.
Yeah, or a freaking Toyota Starlet. You know, like those Starlet drivers are nuts. You know, the freaking car's doing a 3-wheel wheelie. You know, the entire going down the track, and he's throwing gears in there. Yeah. You know, and you're just like, you're nuts.
Yeah, that's what I seen one of them down there, rotary powered Starlet, and if he probably went 1,800 foot to run
1,320 feet
to run a 770.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those dudes are nuts. Yeah. You know, it was really funny. I was listening to a podcast with one of the guys who works down at Bradenton Motorsports Park, and he had volunteered to go and help up at World Cup Finals. You know, that it gets him onto the start line and everything. And he's like, but never before where I go by and there's an entire like engine just in the trash can. Yeah. Right. But it's like all the Honda Civic guys and rotary guys, like they'll break a motor and they're like, all right, well, you know, and they just toss it. Yeah. They toss it because they've got 3 more in the trailer. Right. Yeah. And it's like, meanwhile, like us V8 Coyote guys, like your engine breaks, you're done. Yeah. You know, you're just like, well, I guess I'm done for the weekend, you know.
Yeah, and there probably isn't much left to them little motors whenever they do let go. Yeah.
Yeah. The X front wheel drive class they've been doing, do you know how many passes they get on those tires? 3. They get 3 passes. You know, and I'm like, I get almost half a season.
Yeah. That's when with my car I was buying, when I did the 10.5-inch tire class, there was a guy that was running Goodyear slicks, and he wouldn't put about 5 or 6 passes on them. And I had to go buy them for $200 off of him and put them on my car.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, this has been an absolute blast. I'm sure there's a ton more that we could talk about. I think we just barely scratched the surface, so we'll definitely have to have you back again.
All right.
You know,
definitely would love to come back.
Yeah. I hope to see you out there at that race in November, you know, just to come support it. All right. And where can people reach out to you and find you and follow you guys?
The new shop is at 304 Circle Lane here in Raleigh. Okay. And I don't do Instagram and stuff. They tell me I should, but I got Facebook page, Wicked Performance and Auto Repair.
Okay. I've put that down in this section of the screen now. Yeah. So I'll do that in editing. Yeah. Future Nate will do that.
Yeah, and they put my shop phone on a cell phone, so that's
now you can't run away from it.
Yeah, well, that and it's a little weird. Yeah, I'm not used to having a phone on me all the time. So if you call and I don't answer, then just leave me a message. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, it's I got it set up so that I have my business and my personal number come to the same phone.
Yeah.
But it marks it, so it'll tell me whether it's a personal call in or a business call coming in.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, if it's a personal, I'm going to go, hey.
Yeah.
If it's a business, it's going to be like, thank you for calling VDH Plumbing. Yeah.
It goes back to trying to pay attention to building a transmission, and the phone's ringing off the hook, so it gets left in the office most of the time. But
I get that 100%.
Yeah.
But well, thank you very much for coming on, man.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to see you next time.
Right.
Guys, you can follow me at Nate the Fast Plumber on Instagram or on my YouTube channel, The Fast Plumber. I'm going to be posting some stuff up there pretty soon. The engine for the car is almost done, so we're going to be taking a field trip over there to Hauser Racing Engines and check out the new motor that we got built for the car. And, we're making steps. We're getting closer. So, brother, thank you for coming on, and don't forget to sign the hood before you head out.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys next time.